Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with some more Thrones of Britannia early access footage for you. Now before I dive into things, just a quick note for those of you that might have missed the news, the game has actually been delayed, launching on the 3rd of May instead. I've linked to a blog post in the description down below that gives some more details, but the short story is that the folks at Creative Assembly have seen the feedback that came through from all the videos and comments a few weeks ago, and decided that there was still some work to be done. Some of that work has already been implemented in this build, in fact, and it is already starting to make a difference. More details on that will be in another video I intend to release shortly, focusing in on the changes and a field battle. Now in this video, we're taking a look at the other type of Vikings the game has to offer, Viking Sea Kings. In a previous video, we took a look at Northumbria, a Viking faction, but one belonging to the Great Viking Army faction group. While those Vikings have to deal with local politics, trying to balance the happiness of their armies and the conquered people through the Here King mechanic, these Vikings are of a more violent disposition, and their mechanics focus around the ideas of tribute and going on expeditions, both of which have you pursuing battles, raids, and other such nefarious activities for buffs. There are two such factions to choose from: Surdreyar, which starts in a rather economically poor position in the mountainous region of northern Scotland and has a mission system as a unique element, and Dyflin, starting in Ireland with a much better economy and a slave trade mechanic that I was very curious to see in action. Now, since we're going to Ireland this time, I must warn you that the pronunciations are likely to be even worse than before, despite the handy pronunciation guide I was given by Creative Assembly. I apologize, but I'm trying here. Feel free to give me some tips in the comments down below. Right at the start, Dyflin is able to upgrade units to bronze level armor and weapons because of a building chain at the capital. This is, of course, nice and helpful at the start. There's also a local rebellion and a mission to take it out. This is a constant across factions, and I imagine it will be a tutorial battle in the final game. With Dyflin, though, apart from accomplishing the mission, you also get your first bit of tribute from winning the battles.
Moving out.
As you can see, tribute is gained through battle, diplomacy, tech, etc., and it gives some compelling buffs to influence in the economy.
Enemy blood wolf.
While I wait to close the gap to the rebels, I get some structures built, including a better slave market and a Viking port that will allow me to upgrade units even further. Eliminating the rebel army increases my war fervor, tribute, expedition, and slave count, and shortly after I get an early event playing as Dyflin. Now, the last time I got this, I decided to go in by force and conquer Brega through war, but this time I opted to demand they submit instead. Now this allowed me to gain territory without battle, which might sound like a win, but it actually meant I'd stagnated my growth of tribute, expedition points, and slaves, and all the buffs that come with it. Again, just an example of how warlike behavior is preferred as the Sea Kings. So, in the interest of not falling behind, I raise a second army and push my first army into Meade's territory with a plan to start raiding.
We will serve. Prepare to plunder them.
You'll see this quickly starts increasing my expedition points, and as all these events are kicking off on the Isles, I raid my way towards my next target, Meade's cities.
Enemy blood will flow. Get marching, men.
War fervor is increasing, which will be helpful at the start of the war, but it will drain quickly once it begins, and the completion of a better slave market at Dyflin means my slave trade is helping my economy quite a bit, and my public order too. So, I get a bigger slave Zarus and proceed to go to war with Meade. Now as I conquer settlements, I opt to sack and then occupy, because sacking doesn't just give me money, it gives a huge increase to my expedition points, something I'm eager to fill up.
Yes, indeed. Hit hard. Agreed.
All this expansion starts causing some loyalty issues though, but nothing I can't solve by handing out some estates, nice and easy. Now a new mission comes in, one that I actually didn't get in a previous playthrough where I didn't go to war with Mede, so I hope this is an indication of missions that actually line up with player actions. That would be a great change here. Now as I go about conquering Mede's lands, however, I have to convert some of their cultural buildings to make sure they don't start causing trouble for me and to ensure that cities are at maximum efficiency.
Enemy blood will flow.
Over the course of the next few turns, I take the city of Arthak in a battle I manually fight for about 7 minutes, and once again, I sack and then occupy, and this allows me to send out my first expedition.
Yes, indeed. We pledge your service. We will. We will serve!
In my previous playthrough, I sent my first expedition south. They got to Brittany, and I tried to vassalize the locals there without any luck. This time, we're going southeast, and at the same time, many new Viking factions are arriving on the Isles. One of them is going to cause me trouble down the line, not that I know it just yet.
You can rely on us.
Not possible.
We'll see. Glory awaits us. March on.
For now, I decide to prepare myself for a potential attack up north,
Move up.
and considering the small enemy army to the south can take minor settlements from me with ease, I also raise a third army. My foe to the north decides to go on a suicide mission against 2 of my armies, which is an easy win for me and quite troubling to see, to be perfectly honest. But between turns, one of the new Viking factions decides to declare war on me, and I figure they're far enough away and I don't have to worry just yet. My tribute level continues to increase and gives me better buffs, as you can see, and my slave trade is going quite swell as well.
Enemy blood will flow.
Unfortunately, people are beginning to get tired of war because of all the trouble near our borders. So I have to end this war quickly, pushing in to put Cloyne MacNoy under siege in the hope of finishing Mede off.
Now!
My expedition, meanwhile, arrives at a metaphorical fork in the road, and I have to make a decision for the progress while trouble starts brewing at home. Not only is there a rebellion, but the enemy Viking army was a lot closer than I initially thought, and somebody is trying to blackmail me. Thankfully, I have enough money to pay him off without too much trouble. Next up, I take the city of Cloyne MacNoy with a good old sack and occupy, seeing my tribute rocket even higher while allowing me to finish Mede off, accomplishing my mission. This is all great, of course, but the loss of Linz means my food situation is extremely dire. A great showcase of how undefended minor settlements can be serious trouble for unsuspecting players. Now, I'm able to repair some food production buildings and assign a governor with the farmer trait, allowing me to reduce the damage done here, but it's nowhere near enough. And it doesn't help that Fingale, the Vikings, are right on my coast, and it also doesn't help that the rebels at Linz were taken out by a faction to my north. No longer can I just take the city off rebel hands, now I have to go to war for it.
Fit and ready!
While all this is happening here, my expedition comes to its last choice. An expedition in a previous playthrough was a failure, so I'm hoping for better luck this time as I push to conquer the locals, trying to live up to my stereotype. We'll see what happens there soon. For now, I'm about to lose another important settlement and an army to this very aggressive Viking force. With war fervor insanely low, I decide to get peace with Mede's former ally to the north, despite being far superior to their puny nation. After all, there is a new war about to kick off. And here's an example of how tribute can be used as currency for temporary boons rather than long-term buffs. I decide not to spend my tribute here because my economy is strong enough, and lo and behold, it turns out my expedition was a success. Sort of a Pyrrhic victory in true Total War fashion, it would seem, but I do get a buff to my tribute and a buff from having my expedition succeed as well. And I'm almost halfway towards my next expedition already. Back at home, I make very quick work of the foolish Vikings that thought to take my city, and then go to war with Ergala with vengeance in mind, but that's a story for a different time. My time with the Viking Sea Kings has been quite compressed in this video, but once more, I find the campaign mechanics are working really nicely and feel great. The difference between these Vikings and the Great Viking Army factions is quite interesting. On the one hand, I had to be careful not to upset locals and was driven to war against my own people, while here, I was constantly looking to raid and sack and fight and loot, enslave and conquer, grow in power, and go out on expeditions. I'd be curious to see just how many expeditions there are. With variety of potential benefits and losses and different storylines, the mechanic can come to life. I also, for once, found myself driven to sack before occupying settlements, something I don't usually do unless the immediate monetary incentive is very high. Surdreyar, the other Viking-seeking faction, is interesting as well, with a weak starting economy and war on the horizon right at the beginning. They don't have the slave mechanic, but instead have a flow of missions as mentioned earlier in the video. I thought I'd focus on Dyflin as we've been on the other island for my previous few videos, and for my thoughts on the factions of Kirken and Northumbria and their mechanics, make sure you check out my other early access videos. And make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all sorts of Total War news, be it Warhammer, Thrones of Britannia, or whatever else they're cooking up. Till next time, thank you very much for watching, and cheers.